it depends what you mean by ethereal, but I think it's a field. I think these things work through what I call morphic fields.
Yes.
And morphic fields are fields. And in science, we have quite a number of fields. And there's the magnetic field around the magnet. You can't see the magnetic field. It's in the magnet and it's around it. The gravitational field around the Earth, it's an invisible organizing structure that keeps the moon in its orbit and keeps us down on the ground. Then there's the electromagnetic field of your cell phone, which is active inside the cell phone, but extends invisibly beyond it. And now all of these are fields, and fields were first introduced into science in the 1840s. They're not part of the original Newtonian mechanistic picture. And most of our modern technologies are field-based technologies. I mean, right now we're talking on Zoom. The whole of this works on electromagnetic fields and transmissions and so on. So I think morphogenetic fields, probably the form-shaping fields, and morphic fields, which is the generic term to cover form-shaping fields and behavioral fields and social fields. I think these are actual organizing fields, invisible organizing structures. They're patterns or regions of activity in space and time. And so it may sound, the fact they're invisible and they organize things invisibly, some people would say, oh, wow, this must be pseudoscience, it's woo-woo and so on. But actually, that's the basis of the whole of modern science. The whole of modern science is explaining the visible in terms of the invisible. And once you get into quantum matter fields and the zero-point energy field and the Higgs boson field, we're dealing with a whole range of fields which underlie reality. They're invisible, they give structure and order and form to things. Morphic fields is another kind of field. We've already got several kinds within science, but I don't think it's yet an exhaustive list.
Yeah, you give those are very important examples in not only Earth's magnetic field, the gravitational pulls, all of the technology in the last 150 years is now functioning off of these invisible fields to the human eye. This is very important. It's so true that in social groups, there's almost some sort of a morphic field that happens. If you've ever been around, especially in like Northern California, what happens is you have an extremely homogenized perspective about a specific topic, and you basically can't really enter a new idea into like a social group if they have a homogenized idea. And with athletes, there's something going on with athletes. Myself am one, and have played for so long different sports, especially in team sports, where there's some sort of a collective intelligence that's happening that is, it's in a sense, it's some sort of an extrasensory perception, and there's something going on between the teammates where they're able to be in complete surrendered flow to communication and sharing. So ultimately, Rupert, what we can have science do to further prove this is more randomized control trials around how our capacity to quickly learn around the world new ideas. And so this can be a way for science to further probe and understand that with all these examples.
Yes, well, looking at social fields, yes, I think that there are fields that organize social groups, and I've looked at these in animals because all social animals have social fields. They all have to coordinate members of the group. And when you look at flocks of starlings, for example, which we have here in England in the winter, huge flocks of up to 1 million birds, they fly around before dusk, and the whole flock can change direction almost immediately without the individuals bumping into each other. They know not only where the others are, but where they're going to go. And the same is true of schools of fish. And so there's something about animal groups. They can be coordinated by some kind of invisible connection. And the best computer models of these flock behaviors treat them as fields, as if they're a bit like iron filings in a magnetic field. Each individual iron filing is not doing the organizing itself. It's within a larger structure of which it's part. And I think members of social groups are like that. I think that's why you were talking about a kind of consensus views that you get in societies. I mean, scientific paradigms are like that. Thomas Kuhn
Yeah.
pointed out that at any given time, scientists share a common model of reality, a paradigm. And anything that doesn't fit in is dismissed or ignored or treated as heretical. But then there's a scientific revolution and another paradigm takes over, another model of reality. And then the same thing happens again. I mean, his model of scientific revolution was rather like sort of old style Latin American military dictatorships, where you have a kind of dictatorship that's replaced by a different dictatorship. It wasn't, scientific revolutions have involved replacing one dictatorship of ideas with another. They haven't, none of them's yet been like the Declaration of Independence, where the sort of democracy hits science. We're still in the old model of, at any given time. And right now, the dominant worldview is mechanistic materialism. It's coming apart at the edges, and it's, as I show in my book, Science Set Free, called The Science Delusion in the UK. These dogmas of materialism are actually being outgrown by science itself. We're going beyond them. So there's a sense in which social fields constrain our thoughts. They also link us together, and in team sports, they can lead to this coordination that's sort of unconscious and almost sort of automatic. And Michael Murphy looked into this, the founder of the Esalen Institute, who's very keen on looking at sports as an evolutionary phenomenon. And in his book, The Psychic Side of Sports, co-authored with Rhea White, he talks about how he interviewed American football players, and a lot of them felt they were sort of telepathic with other members of the team, but none of them dared say so in the locker room because they thought the others would think they were weird. But this is going on all the time, I think, in sports activities. And it's this connection between members of groups within the social field that underlies telepathic phenomena, like dogs knowing when their owners are coming home and mothers knowing when their baby needs them when they're miles away from the baby. So I think we're linked together with members of our families and members of other social groups through these social fields.
Hello everybody, hope everything's well. Now you heard what he said in the beginning of this video, talking about these different fields. Now these fields are made up of the essence that was here before creations, which I talked about in a previous video, which the melanated man and woman is made of that. Okay. But you heard how he talked about how our auras can mix with other people's. This will explain how when you walk into a room you haven't said anything and people turn around, they have felt your presence. Okay. This will also explain groupthink. As you can see, these people's auras or fields are mixing, because he also talked about how birds and fish would swim in formation without bumping into each other because of this field that they interact with. Okay. Which your pineal gland is a receiver of that. Now, what the powers that were do is use these programs and things of that nature to implant entities into your aura, okay, to control these groups, all right, which is the rituals and things of that nature. They've been studying this for a while. This is also linked to your psychic abilities. And you probably already saw a motion picture of the aura in my video, Quantum Mind, which also gets into how our aura interacts with our reality, okay? Now, this is from CIA.gov, talking about the chronological of recent interest in the exceptional functions of human of the human body in the Republic of China. So it gives you the history on the studies talking about the psychic abilities of these children from the late 70s on down. Okay. Now, here's an article also from PubMed talking about oxytocin improves mind reading in humans, which is also named the love drug, which is produced by your pituitary gland. So when you're in an intimate relationship or you're close with family, friends, there you are also mixing, or your aura is interacting with each other. So I'm sure you've had moments where you've said, oh, let's go do this or let's get something to eat. And they say, oh, you just read my mind. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Because you are now interacting with each other on a quantum level. Okay? Now, this is the reason why they're studying DNA change and why they want to implement this DNA modifier. Because we're now coming into a time where we're reintroducing ourselves into these sciences and becoming what we once were. Okay? I suggest you don't give your DNA to ancestraldna.com or 23andMe. Okay? Now, it says here, for about 3 years, it's been collecting and analyzing genetic information through a service called Ancestral DNA, and in process, quietly asking consumers if they will be willing to share their data with Ancestry for research. To date, it's banked more than 800,000 samples from customers all over the world. Mind you, this has been posted in 2015, okay? So they got a lot more. And they got the technology to check individually uh, these DNA sequences if they're changing or not. Now it says here, from the customers all over the world, okay? Like I was just saying, rivaling the database of Google-backed genetics analyst company 23andMe. Now, we already know who own these companies. I don't have to go to that, all right? You should already know who runs Google and who's running these DNA sequence laboratories, okay? Now, it says here, they are now armed with mountains of health data. Ancestral.com is slowly transforming itself from a retiree hobby into a medical research juggernaut. Okay? So, like I was saying before, they're constantly checking these DNA sequences on the regular. For good reason. All right? And I'm going to have to do a separate video talking about the psychic abilities that are happening or being done in the hood all around the US. Okay. Now I want to show you this article from National Geographic talking about patenting genes. Now here, because the Supreme Court ruled that one cannot patent naturally occurring genes. Okay. But synthetic DNA is fair game. So you can understand now as to why they're trying to um, implement these DNA changers. Because once they have that within you, they own the patents to that, they own you. See how this goes? Now, they already have, and they're coming out and saying it right now. I'm about to show the clip talking about how they believe they have the answers to anti-aging. Okay? I'm going to put this video, the link of it, in the description, of course. They've been doing this through a program called CRISPR. Okay? You can watch the rest of this video on your own, of course. It also talks about in the beginning of this video how a Chinese scientist created two twins that are immune to the HIV virus. Okay? Now let me play this small clip for you.
We believe we understand how to slow aging. There are genes that predispose you to a long life. We could make offspring, a family that would potentially live a lot longer. Actually, there are drugs that are in development to actually correct genetic diseases, such as vision loss. What we're showing is, in mice at least, we can reverse the age of the retina and restore the vision of old mice. So we'd reprogram the eye to be young again. So we now know that there's a set of genes called reprogramming factors, also known as Yamanaka factors, that are named after this Japanese fellow who won the Nobel Prize in 2012. These factors are used all over the world, even to reprogram skin cells, other cells, to be what we call pluripotent stem cells. These are cells that can be used to make new organs or new blood cells. But what people hadn't tried until recently was, can you do this in a living animal? Or are you just going to mess it up? And what we found out is that if you do it the wrong way, you mess up the animal and it'll die. But what we've shown for the first time in this paper is you can do it in a safe way. And not only that, reverse the clock, make the cells young, and restore how they work, and get back vision.
CRISPR was originally...
Okay, so you heard what they said. And you already know why he won the Nobel Peace Prize, because he's one of these Caliph Jews. Okay? But you heard him. They have the ability now to reprogram genes. They already had this for some time now. And they've been doing this for some time now. Okay? But they want to do it organically for themselves while you have cybernetics. So they can control those cybernetics. Okay? I believe this comment said it the best. I think or just guess that for one to achieve the singularity, the key is not to combine our biological form with a machine, which that's what they're trying to do, and they will control that machine through a quantum computer. I already talked about that in previous videos. It's more to create a shell with the ability to interact with a quantum version of ourself. All right, this field, this primordial essence before creation. All right. Some manner our mind can be exported like electrical information. This is how the Dogon were able, and people are able, to astral travel. Okay. An organic human brain fusion with cybernetic body may cause many failures in capabilities. Okay. And that's what they want. So they can keep you on these drugs that they created. All right. If you want to hear about the Dogon being able to astral travel and things of that nature, you can go to my BitChute channel. And a guy named Thomas talks about that. All right, I'll put that link in the description as well. But as I said before, this is why they are trying their hardest, and they're on red alert to modify this DNA change, because our auras are connected with the aura of this plane. So as the frequency changes, the life on here is going to naturally change. And that's the alchemy process. And everything has an aura or a field. That's why people will have even psychic moments with their pets. This is why you can talk about how there's it was an African tribe that used to tame tigers. Okay. So it's all this information that we have showing this here. And anything that's not natural, when the transformation happens, will just disperse. Again, this is why they're trying their hardest to modify this DNA. And we already talked about the rituals and why they're doing that. But thank you for listening, and peace and balance to the ancient ones.